You are tuning into the Unprofessional Marketing Series. This is a series of 8 conversations where I am interviewing experts in their fields to talk about marketing strategies that the gurus don't teach you. So tune in and listen to these experts as they share advice on how you can market your business unprofessionally. Okay, this guest needs no real introduction because I feel like she's famous on the internet. But I am very happy to bring on Pass the Queso, also known as her real name, Emelie, to the show to talk all about using humor in your marketing. This is something that I have loved from the start since I found Emelie on Threads, and that is because I think I'm fucking hilarious. So I instantly resonated with her messaging of clear and clever. But let Emelie introduce herself and tell you all about how to use humor as a marketing strategy. Please introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yes. Okay, cool. I'm Emelie, head honcho of Pass the Queso. I'm a messaging and sales copy strategist, mostly focused on helping people write copy quickly, because honestly, copy is so much of what we do, but without sacrificing the humor element, which we're talking about today, and then also conversion. So yeah, I absolutely agree with the whole, well, yes, you are hilarious, and that definitely plays a part in sales. And so I'm totally here to talk about that.
Well, obviously, I'm going to go straight for the jugular, which is where everybody talks about being clear, not clever. And your messaging is be clear and clever. And so I want to hear, how did you come to that? Was this always your stance? Is it something that came with time?
Definitely not always my stance. Working sort of in the marketing, in the background, in my background, whatever. Everyone, clear, clear, clear. Especially Donald Miller being a really big character, I guess you could say, in a lot of our marketing journeys. It's clear, 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 clear. But what I had noticed was when I had leaned more into just who I am, right? You're oh my God, I'm hilarious. And it's okay, well, I'm just gonna be me. And I noticed the more humor that I brought into things, it captured people's attention, it held attention, and then I was able to kind of guide that better through a sales process. I was like, holy shit, why do we have to choose between these? Why can't we do both? And I get why we're told not to do both because it's harder. It's much harder. It takes extra steps, and honestly, it's harder to sell something like that. It's easier for, a marketer to say, okay, well, I'm just going to teach you how to be clear and kind of bundle that up and package it. It's a lot more black and white, less nuance, all that jazz.
So when you're helping people to infuse the humor into their copy, into their marketing, do you have processes, frameworks, or is it more about stop dulling yourself down? Because that's where for me, the whole be clear, it you kind of took all the personality out when trying to be super clear and just use the same words everybody else is using, right? So
yeah,
what's your
that out of you?
Yeah, what's your way to not suck out the fun?
Yeah, not sucking out the fun. Process wise, so it's kind of both, like you were saying, part of it is stop watering yourself down, give yourself permission. Because one thing that I firmly believe is that everyone is inherently funny. There are just different types of humor. I've got a free humor quiz that kind of breaks that down. It's really cool to see people who even come in to work with me and they're I'm just not really funny. And I'm except you really are. Everyone else can see it. It just might not look like what we stereotypically think of as someone who's funny, which is usually more loud or look at me, or maybe has a certain tendencies in their humor. But as far as process wise or framework method, whatever you want to say, the point is you do have to be clear first. It is very much a process. I've noticed that you have to have a messaging strategy in place and really know what you're saying. And so you have to get clear, and then you can layer on the clever on top of that, which is that personality. So it's kind of weird because you are kind of okay, let's get really naked and unsexy and suck out the personality for a second so we can kind of figure out what we're saying. But then I want you to put it back on. But the problem is a lot of people try to do it in tandem when they've never tried it before. And so then they're how am I supposed to sound interesting and be relevant and be clear? It's dude, because you're trying to do them at the same time. And this is a skill set you haven't developed.
I love that because, like, well, I don't do copy at all. I do content repurposing. And
Yum.
and we do like have a similar thing that I ask you, like, tell me like tell me like I'm 5 what
Yes.
exactly you do, and then tell me your phrases, your colloquialisms, the names that you call your audience, the ways that you talk about your offers, right? Like what's
Hmm.
your slogans, your taglines. I want all of
All the
that,
brand voice stuff. Yeah.
but I want the clear thing first. So I don't have any
Hmm.
misconceptions about what you do and I can use those taglines effectively.
Yes. Yeah. Because you can then give it context.
Mhm.
It's easier to like add on to things than to take something and like really strip it down.
And I feel like you kind of answered this question, but it's a two-parter of, do you think that you are funny? And do you think that everybody can use humor in their marketing?
One, absolutely. I know I am. Listen, I did not get this far in life on looks alone. Like, personality higher, 500%. But yes, everyone is funny and everyone can be funny. A large part of it is that we think of funny as like comedy. And I think that that's a big element because it's like really what we're looking at is like there's kind of three different tiers if you want to think about funny. And it's levity, humor, and comedy. So like levity is simply just like having a nature where you allow things to be fun, you're receptive of it, you create spaces for it to exist. Like you don't necessarily have to make everything like a running joke. And then humor is more so like being intentional with it, right? So like if you're creating repurposing content and you're like, oh my gosh, like this would actually be really funny to like put this in here or to call back to this, or like you're being more intentional with it, that's humor. And then comedy, we don't even have to touch comedy. Comedy is like you're going pro with it, right? Like it's just a muscle. Being like funny is a muscle, and you get to decide like what you want that to look like it's kind of like exercise. You could just go to Pilates, or you could go like hike up a mountain. Like,
Or you could take comedy classes.
take what classes?
Comedy classes.
Yes.
Have you
Yes.
taken comedy classes? I'm like, you have such a deep understanding of this niche.
Well, yes, but mostly like I haven't done anything in person.
I don't do
I think
anything
because
in
the
person.
timing of it. Yeah, I was like, I think it's the timing with COVID. Because I was about to be like, no, and I was like, actually, I have. It's just the COVID and all. No, not in person. So yeah, I've spent a lot of, especially 2024 was a big year that I really deepened my understanding and kind of strategies around it as well. Because it's on one hand, if you're, I mean, everyone is funny, but people who lean in a little bit more. I mean, if I were to ask you, hey, like that thing you said that was really funny, why was it funny? You know, and it's kind of like, oh, well, it just was funny, right?
I'd
Like,
be like,
so yeah, so to be able to like be able to explain why something is funny and deeply understand how it all connects is just really helpful in showing other people that too.
And I feel like because you're in the educational space and not doing done for
This is true.
you, being able to break it down and explain it and like all the nuances of it probably
Hmm.
helps the people who are learning from you.
This is true. Although I do find it's interesting because stand-up copy is like my main program. And originally I had a lot of humor strategies in there. We talked about like messaging, the copy, and then we talked about humor strategies. But honestly, over the last six cohorts, I've really pulled back on that because I find that even just helping people find their brand voice and giving people permission, was just like shocked at how naturally people just like stepped into how they're funny. And so I don't, you don't even need to know, how are all the different ways it can be funny, or what are some like humor strategies? Like, you don't even need all of that. Just giving yourself permission alone is going to get you really far.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost step one, but there is more to
Yes. Yes.
it.
Yeah. Well, I guess really step one is like we were saying before, which is like, okay, let's make it really clear,
Mm. Mm.
and then we'll do that. I think that's the biggest point I'm always driving home because people are like, it's just so hard. I'm like, because you're trying to do it at the same time. Just chill. Like, just
Yeah.
listen to me.
Oh, definitely. And like, I know that you're in the educational space with copywriting now. Did you start out with done for you, or did you always do
Yeah, done for you for sure. I guess if we're kind of like dating back, my originally worked as just like a marketing director
Mm.
and specifically with email. Really big like like big launching scene like 20 what was that like 2017? Like all the webinars and the like you know. So email and was all done for you. And then I started doing sales pages and then newsletters and then like from there. So sales copy is definitely like my specialty. And I still do take on a couple of done for you projects, like large ones a year, just to kind of keep with it. But I don't actively take them on. I love teaching, which I never thought I would ever say.
How did you find your way to teaching?
Oh man, it's actually funny. I took a beat to do web design for a little bit because it was just such an easy sell. I was like, oh, this is so easy to sell these like packages where I just did like these websites and then the copy on them. And I got to a point where everyone was, I would get mad every time someone like bought the package that didn't have the copy because I wanted to just write the copy. And then I started noticing that people wanted to like learn how to do it themselves. And I was like, oh, I mean, yeah, I could probably teach people how to do this. And so that's kind of where it began. And then I started learning actually about, teaching versus coaching versus this versus that. So a lot of what I do is more of like strategy and teaching. And I've only recently kind of reintroduced the coaching element, which is just a whole other skill set that I am wanting to develop more. I think I want to not add to the nasty coaching space.
That's fair. I understand.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I did in the beginning, like when I went from done for you to done with you, I didn't quite understand like education versus coaching, and it's just different. So newer to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very misused. Education, coaching,
Yeah,
mentoring. I think a lot of
they're
people.
used like in hand.
And they're not. There's different
Yeah.
levels to it all. And so I think people get influenced.
Hmm.
I know I get influenced. But like something that I've seen through my investing journey is like there's ways that I learn better.
Yeah, the investment journey. That's a whole can of worms.
Yeah, I actually really liked I think you did a thread and a Loom video, but like I read
Yeah.
the thread because that's where I am. But
Yeah, same.
I love any like 2020 like year before reflection posts.
Hmm. Oh yeah, me too. I'm especially nosy, so I'm like, oh, you're gonna tell me how much money you spent doing what? So I was like, I want to do that. So that was fun. But you said that you have noticed the ways that you learn best this past year.
Mm,
What were
yeah.
those?
I mean, I've known it for a while, but I like reinforced it. I don't learn well in memberships.
Mm,
I don't know if it's the lack of a deadline or,
mm.
like
There's
that
not like a set cadence.
that you can just come in and
Yeah.
use it whenever you want. So then I just never use it.
It's like the opposite problem of a buffet. It's like a buffet, except you just don't use.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm not going to choose the buffet. I'm going to like choose the thing that's telling me I need to be here right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And a lot of group programs can be a little bit like that too. It's like a buffet, but like you have to go through it fast. It's like, here's a buffet, you have access it for like 6 weeks. And then it's like, what do I do in here?
Yeah. And that's where it's like, I
So,
literally need you to provide me with the checklist of like, week 1, you should be here. Week 2, you should be here. Week 3, you should be here. Because otherwise, I'm just like,
yeah.
well, I came in, I watched the like start here module, and then I stopped.
And
But I think
then you
yeah.
I was saying, and then you have your people who are like, they go through the whole thing. You're like, cool, I've done nothing. I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
watched.
I just watched and I didn't implement. I think that looking at my 2024 investments, that I did a lot more done for you, and I'm like
Mm,
happy with that choice.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is something that has been really interesting to kind of look at as someone who does done with you. Is
Mhm.
like this sort of shit, because I've even seen it in myself where I'm like, I can't be doing everything, and also I don't have a desire to learn everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just don't. There's some things I'm like, I don't want to touch it. Um, and so like as someone who is like selling done with you, it has been interesting. I do think that I don't want to say like anyone is safe, but I do think that because everything, like we're writing copy all the time, we're selling all the time. It's like you can't just like outsource all of that. Like you can say, okay, I hired someone to go to that sales page, but what happens if you have to write emails? Okay, well I'll just have someone write my emails too. Okay, well, what about your newsletter? Oh, I'll have someone do that too. Okay, well what about it's like you can't just like sell yourself away. So in that way, I haven't noticed kind of a lack of interest in learning to do what I teach yet.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
If
No,
we get
I
there,
think
I will
I
let you
think
know.
with like ChatGPT, and I'll ask you this after, but like I think with like ChatGPT and like people leaning into more like AI and like put it out faster and put out more content, like it
Yeah.
definitely your promise of like write copy faster is very attractive in the
Hmm.
space. Do you use ChatGPT? Do you or AI in general? Do you have like bots in your program? Do you recommend bots,
Yeah.
prompts, blah blah blah, all of that?
Yeah, I am not an anti-AI copywriter at all. I love it. So instead of copy, yeah, we've got like um well there's a bot that helps with sort of like the messaging strategy. Because some people just feel like really stuck, and I'm just repeatedly kind of saying and coaching through the same things, and so it's kind of like, hey, let's run through this first. So there's that. There's a whole bunch of AI elements, but it's completely optional because I do have people that come in and they're not like anti-AI or they wouldn't work with me, but they do come in and they're like, I'd rather do this on my own. And so they're able to still write copy. Like we have data points that we track and all that, and people do end up like cutting their copywriting time in half. Like it's wild. And they're able to do that without the AI. So the AI is just more of a supplemental, you know, if you want to use it.
Hmm.
So big fan. Of course everyone and their mother knows if used right.
Yes. That's like I was talking with Kama Mama earlier, who's SEO blogging, and we were talking about like using AI as the tool and not actually the
Yeah.
writer in the end. Like you still need to put in your thoughts, your
Yeah.
beliefs, your messages, your stories. AI
Mhm.
can't do that. And I think
Yeah.
that's something
Gotta
where
do the
like
pre-work.
yeah, it's like if you can prompt it properly, you can get good content, good copy, but I think a lot of people aren't prompting it properly because like I see content
Yeah.
sometimes and I'm just like, I know that's AI.
Oh yeah, like 500%. Like
Mm,
our AI detectors are just really good.
mm,
I will say that I do like we have been able to get it to actually write really damn good copy, but it's only because it's like okay, like I mentioned before, that strategy piece. So like or the messaging strategy. If we feed it the messaging strategy and then we also feed it the kind of brand voice guide that we put together and then say, "Hey, we're writing blah blah blah," and to include sort of like these points it really does like put off some stuff that I'm like, dude, that sounds like you wrote it and this is creepy as hell.
mm.
So
But
yeah,
you
it's
have to
it
give
I
it
mean
a lot.
massage,
I think you have to
yeah,
give it a lot of
yeah,
sentences to put your sentences
yeah.
together.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's why, like, when we do, create the brand voice guide, what's fun is we actually use AI for it. So we're kind of collecting, like, these are the type of content. Like, I want you to go look at content that you've written
Mhm.
that you really like, and they need to fit, like, these credentials, whatever. Bring them through. We've got a prompt in it. We basically have AI do an analysis of their brand voice guide, which is really cool, of their brand voice and help put together this guide. And it's just so cool though. It's like, okay, we've done a lot of pre-work, but once you've done the pre-work, like you have these really great things to feed AI. And so it's pretty damn cool. But one thing I'm always looking out for, I think one of the biggest tells for AI is it obviously can't have original thought, as we
Mhm.
know. And so it's like the filler is just so obvious.
Do you
It's
have any
bad.
pet peeve fillers?
I think they're just like patterns that everyone kind of has an annoyance with. The it's not about blank, it's about blank. I feel like that's a big pattern. Um, segues that just take up space, like here's the truth
Mhm.
kind of stuff.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah. Like I that's the one. I don't really have things like that's an AI tell or whatever. It's just there's definitely like I mean it's if you don't have a defined brand voice, AI will give you one and it's just AI.
Mhm.
And yeah, it is what it is.
No,
I don't even fight it anymore unless like, I'm not even gonna fight you if you're working with me. Yes, I will. But if you're just some stranger on the internet, I gotta protect my peace a little bit.
I find myself deleting a lot of the segues and just starting the
Yeah.
sentence where I want to start the sentence. I'm like, what? Why do
Why
I?
do we need this?
And then sometimes I find myself sitting there like trying to write a segue. I'm like, why do I need that? Like, I don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
That's a recent conversation we just had in one of our group calls where we were just like we tried to talk about segues. It's like, why do you need a segue? Like, just take that out and read it. And then we read it, and they were like, oh,
mm.
you don't need to introduce every thought that you have. Like, say it with your chest. Like, just go all in.
Yeah, and especially like you've already written a whole piece of content about it. Like, it doesn't need the segue. You can just continue.
Yeah. So,
All right. So
yeah.
if someone is skeptical about using humor in their marketing, what do you recommend? Where do you recommend they start?
Um, just with their personality. Like, I know that sounds so silly, but it's like, just let yourself be a little more you, whatever that looks like. So if you're like, oh, I have a lot of people that are like, I just don't want to put like a lot of exclamation marks. It's like use the exclamation marks. Why is everyone so anti like exclamation marks? Or if they're like, oh, like I want to like tell this story, like tell the story. Like so it's more just like reveal a little bit more about who you are. It can be a little bit of a shock to your audience if you do kind of present yourself in one way and then just wake up one day and go, fuck it, I'm just gonna be me, and then you like just go all out. It's just a very stark difference sometimes, but yeah, just a little bit of permission to be yourself. One of the one of the two main principles of humor is that there's a truth behind every joke. And so when people are more open to telling their stories, their observations, things that they find true, it kind of just starts to naturally form.
I like that. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, be careful with it.
Is there a dark side?
Yes. So I remember that growing up, I've always had a more like biting, dark, short kind of type of humor. And I remember growing up, like if I made any sort of like joke, I remember my mom being like, there's truth behind every joke. So that means that you actually think that or actually believe it. And this woman would catch me. I'm like, this woman would catch me using jokes to be mean. It wasn't always nice, but, but another thing too is like emotions are just a really big part of humor, and one thing to be kind of careful of is anger, which I find that like I see people, especially on threads, with everyone being like, I'm going to be unhinged. And it's like, you're not being unhinged, you're being an asshole. Like, it's not like you think you're being funny, but what you're doing is you're punching down at someone. And so if you're going to make fun of something, someone, it either needs to be something that everyone collectively hates or it needs to be punching up, right? Like, I'm a small fish. I can punch up at someone like, like Jenna Kutcher, right? Like, that's why we will spell out people's names. We'll be like, oh yeah, that popular Pinterest course by Jenna Kutcher that kind of rolls, gets a little push this time of year. Like, we will say her name, right?
Mhm.
But if you think about your peers that might have like a Pinterest course or some other program, you might notice that there's sort of a hesitancy in wanting to like name them if you're talking shit about that, right? And it's because we kind of inherently understand that we're on the same playing field or kind of in the same space. So just one thing to be careful of is to make sure you're always punching up and not down
I'm
or
like,
at yourself.
yeah, I'm laughing because I totally did a thread. I'm very like reactive sometimes. And somebody
Same.
who has like tens of thousands of followers was like, stop trying to sell high ticket, create a $7 course and sell it 100 times, And I instantly was like, people are so tone deaf. Like, selling something 100 times, high ticket or low ticket, is not easier when you have a small
Also,
audience.
that's only $700 anyway.
Yeah.
Like, that's nothing.
But like I posted it immediately after seeing the post from the popular
Yeah.
person, and someone commented like, "Oh, I just saw this post." And I was like,
And you're
"Yeah,
like,
I'm literally referencing that post." And like, "Well, I really like that person." And I'm like, "I don't
good for
not
you.
like that person, but I think that post was tone deaf." But I was also like, "Too soon. I should have like waited till tomorrow." And then people wouldn't have been like, "I just saw who you're talking about. Like you're throwing shade."
Like they're scrolling their feeds and
Like
they
I
see
am
that person's
throwing
post and then
shade, but like
yours.
not
Yes.
in a mean way. But also it was probably mean.
I have to be careful not to thread past a certain time at night because I am very reactive as well. My go-to, if I feel any sort of way like negatively, it's always angry. Like I just get mad. My fuse is so short. Maybe one day I will mature. Probably not. But yeah, at night I find myself like, and what I do is I put it in draft. That's kind of the rule. Like I don't thread past a certain point. I put it in draft, and then I look at it the next day, and sometimes I look back and I'm like, damn.
This was not for the public.
You would, that is inside thought. That's hard to keep those inside thoughts inside sometimes. But yeah, and another sort of like humor, I would say, beware is self-deprecation. That's like everyone's sort of like go-to. And that's an interesting one because if you are someone with like a really good reputation with something in like a certain area, that's totally fine. Like, especially like if you're, I don't want to say like a leader because it's like what does define that? And that's a whole other conversation. But it just studies even show that leaders who indulge in self-deprecation are perceived as like more respected. People just like, you know, there's a humility about it. But if you are someone who might be new to the space or kind of exploring something for the first time, self-deprecation can actually make you look really bad. Um, which is something that we see though, which is interesting, where people have these sort of like mindset boo-boos about things or like hang-ups, and the way they're trying to cope with it is humor, and so they'll kind of like punch at themselves, and it's like, okay, you're not being funny, like we can see you're insecure about this, and so that's something to be very aware of. I see that a lot, and I don't think people understand that that's what it is, but when I have conversations around it, I'm like, hey, let's like look at this. Why did you write this? And we can have a conversation about it. I do find that most of the time people are like, oh, like that's exactly what I was doing. We just like don't always see it.
I find that interesting because it makes me think of like the performative behavior of like looking for sympathy. Like that's what that was making me think about, of like that's where it leads towards like you don't look like a leader anymore. It makes you look bad because it's like it's performative. You're looking for the wrong reactions.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good yeah, that's exactly it. But
Good
yeah,
thoughts.
look at you. Post that on Threads. Go.
Right. So I always wrap these interviews up by asking, what makes you an unprofessional entrepreneur?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. What is professional? Like, I know this is so silly, but it's like, what makes someone professional? I feel like you can relate to this. I mean, we did this similar summit together where it was, talking about different, breaking rules in business. And it's like you talked about, oh, I'm ditching this platform to do this, and no one else is doing that. I feel like probably just the mindset I have of I go into business and then I don't go, what am I supposed to be doing? It's just I go in and I'm like, well, what do I want to do? And how am I going to make it work? And that's probably not very professional, but it works.
Works for me.
Yeah, no, I think probably ultimately it is the fact that like I don't think that there's a way to be a professional. Exactly. I think we're all just out here doing our damnest.
I mean, it's like when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's like because the word professional relates to your profession, right? So like your profession is being a copywriter. So being an entrepreneur, it's like my profession is to do what I want.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I see you relate to your profession. Yeah. I mean, if we were to get like really nitty gritty with it within kind of the copy space, I mean, yes, you can outsource your copy. There's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, I've taken on those jobs. I still do. I'm not against outsourcing, but I definitely think that everyone is their own best copywriter. And in the copywriting space, I have a lot of conversations with people who join my email list and then promptly leave it. That like just copywriters do tend to kind of think that they're these like very like they have this skill set that they were given and it's unteachable and it's special and like you're either born with it or you're not. And it's like, I mean, it's an art. I hear that a lot. It's an art. And I'm like, yes, but can you, I mean, yes, people will be naturally better at it or not, but can you learn how to paint? Can you learn how to like throw clay and make a vase thing? Like, yes, you can. Like, the problem is not that you do something special that nobody else can. It's that you don't know how to teach. It's a teaching skill that you're lacking. It's not a copywriting skill that other people are lacking. So that's a very hard stance that I take.
I love that because I think that all marketing skills are learned skills. No one is born an expert marketer. Like,
and the audacity, I think what it is too, it's like the audacity of being like, only I can do this. You can't. I'm like, where did you learn how to do it? You just wake up one like you were just birthed, you came out of your mother and you're like, I'm a copywriter. Like I don't
just this is my destiny.
It's like, okay, listen, like you're not out here saving lives. We're writing words. Or as my 8-year-old tells me, if you ask her to describe what I do, it's like, why? She's like, you teach people how to write words that trick other people into buying things from them.
A little cynical.
I'm like, you're not wrong,
but
behind it, I don't like it.
You're not promoting me.
But then, like, why can't I just be like, my mom works on the computer? Like, that's a cuter little kid thing to say, not a manipulator.
A word manipulator.
Yes.
All right, where can the people find you?
Threads.
Yeah, Threads, that's it.
You can find both of us there. We go nowhere else. I am past the queso over there because I had to get a new stupid handle because of Meta. So yeah, or you can just look up Pass the Queso. I'll pop up. And then from there, I highly recommend joining my newsletter, the Copy Cantina. That's linked up on there too.
Good shit.
Yeah, that's the only place I am right now. I'll be on YouTube later, and then I'll be contacting you because I want no part in repurposing shit.
I understand because I talked to someone today also about YouTube, and I was like, YouTube just seems like a beast. I podcast, and that's already a beast. Yeah. Like, the amount of time podcasting takes me over writing an email, lots of time. So yeah. YouTube, more time.
Yeah, this year I'm rolling out a video podcast, but then it's like the video is going to be, I know, this is a big project. I'm so pumped. I'll let you in on it. It's going to be a game show.
I love game shows.
So it's going to be awesome, but at the same time I'm like, I'm about to start making like entertainment content and like I need to repurpose that shit.
Yeah, you do. It's gonna be hilarious.
I'm so excited, but yeah, content repurposing for the win. And even see also done for you. There you go.
Done for you is the future, man. Bam.
That's where it's at.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming on my show and sharing your witty humor. And as always, don't forget to stay unprofessional.
Woohoo.
I think that's